Hello everybody, my name is Elijah Sumpter and welcome to my presentation. Thank you for tuning in. Now today we are going to be asking a very important question. Is science good or evil? Now there's been a lot of controversy surrounding science in general for many years. Many of you would probably also have a stance on this. You would probably say science is either good or evil. Those are the two options, of course. I, however, in this presentation, will take the stance that science is really neither. It is, in fact, neutral in and of itself. Now, I will be providing some information to back this up, an example from history, and perhaps that will help you see where I'm kind of coming from. So before we get into this example, we're going to lay down some background information. This example will have a lot to do with the element nitrogen. Now, if you know anything about nitrogen, you know that it is very important in life as we know it. Animals, plants, even humans use nitrogen within their bodily functions, and then humans also use it for other means, industry and whatnot. Luckily for us, nitrogen is very easy to come by. In fact, a large portion of our Earth's atmosphere is composed of nitrogen. Now, unfortunately for us, we can't really use any of it. It's kind of like salt water versus fresh water. We have a lot of water, we can't use all of it. There's only a very small portion we can use. The nitrogen in our atmosphere has to be refined into a more usable form before we can consume it or use it in any of our other endeavors. Now, luckily for us, in 1905, Fritz Haber came up with a process for refining the nitrogen. He figured out how to turn atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia, which is a very important part of fertilizers and other things. Now, this original process really couldn't produce much nitrogen, and it couldn't produce it fast. But by 1914, by buddying up, I suppose, by partnering with a man named Carl Bosch, Fritz Haber was able to ready the process for mass production. So in 1914, we were able to produce a lot of nitrogen. We were able to produce it very quickly, which is going to be important. We will call this process the Haber process. I can't remember if I've already said that, but we'll say it now. And it played a very massive part in the 20th century. Some experts have called it the most important technological advancement of the 20th century. So first of all, we're going to go into some of the good things it was used for. First of all was the Green Revolution. This was the period of time when agricultural production increased drastically and the food pool grew and expanded massively, allowing the population to also grow. Now, this was in part caused by the Haber process. The Haber process allowed for a lot of ammonia to be produced quickly, which meant that a lot more fertilizer could be produced than was previously possible. Now, this allowed food production to skyrocket, which in turn allowed more babies to be born and more population to be supported. Within the 20th century alone, in fact, the human population jumped from 1.9 billion people to 6 billion people. Now, that's nearly triple in size, and that is very impressive. And it would not have been possible at all without the Haber process. Now, on the flip side of the coin, the Haber process was also used for some very, we shall say, nefarious purposes. Nitrogen, in addition to being an important part of fertilizer, is also a very important part of ammunition and explosives in general. You can't make gunpowder, you can't make explosives, you can't make any of that kind of stuff without nitrogen. And before 1905, there was really no good way to get it except for mining it from the ground in the forms of saltpeter or a similar substance. And in 1905, the most common source of saltpeter was in Chile, all the way down in South America. Now, when World War I started, the Triple Alliance, that being Britain, France, and Russia, were able to put up a blockade and stop a lot of that nitrogen from getting to the Triple Entente, that being Germany and their allies. Now, this meant that Germany did not have very much nitrogen at all for producing weaponry, and that was problematic. They were quickly running out of ammunition. They would not have been able to prolong the war very long. However, as you know, in 1914, the Haber process was adapted for mass production. This meant that the Germans now had access to this technology, which means they could produce as much nitrogen whenever they wanted. This allowed them to produce a lot of gunpowder, a lot of ammunition, explosives, etc., and it in fact prolonged World War I for much longer than it would have gone otherwise. So, as we can see, science can be used for either good or evil. In the case of the Green Revolution, it can be used to produce a lot of extra food to sustain more life. It helped people survive more easily and in better conditions. However, it can also be used in very evil circumstances. It can be used to provide ammunition, to prolong wars, explosives. It can be used in bombs, all of that good stuff. So as we can see, this one process is both good and evil, which it can't be both. That doesn't make any sense. So I would propose that, in fact, scientific discovery in and of itself is neutral. As long as we don't touch it, as long as we do not do anything with it, it is simply neutral. The second we apply it to actual everyday life, that is when it becomes assigned a modifier, good or evil. And I believe that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I will talk to you next time. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.